Know what would make that better? A cup of white cane coffee.
Wow, that really is great coffee.
White cane coffee, because every cup makes a difference.
It's not just about music lessons. It's about hard work, perseverance, dedication, self-expression, making memories. Let's make memories together.
Good Saturday morning and welcome into the cafe as White Cane Coffee presents Coffee and a Conversation. I'm your host, Brian Hagberg for your Daily Local. We are in the White Cane Coffee Cafe, which is open here in the plaza across from Tops, all through the downtown construction. You can stop in, get yourself a fresh cup. I've got my Dragon's Roast as usual. You can also get cinnamon roll scones, other delicious baked goods, and right around the corner starting in September, it will be pumpkin spice season here at White Cane Coffee. Stop in, get yourself a fresh cup. Say hi to the friendly folks here at White Cane. If you don't want to deal with that construction, that's no problem. White Cane's also available on DoorDash. Just place your order, have your favorites delivered right to your door. You can also order your favorite roast to brew at home online at whitecanecoffee.com. And again, this is Coffee and a Conversation. And this week we are so happy to be joined by the Warren County Children's Advocacy Center Executive Director, Melissa McLean. Melissa, welcome to Coffee and a Conversation.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me today.
And so let's get right into it. I know you guys are kind of nestled in right at the end of the, I guess Veterans Bridge, Hickory Street Bridge for all you old timers like me. Right at the end of the Hickory Street Bridge, the Children's Advocacy Center. Obviously, you guys, put things out in April and things like that. But for people who have maybe just driven by and seen exteriorly what goes on inside the Children's Advocacy Center.
Yeah, so the Children's Advocacy Center here in Warren County actually opened 5 years ago. So this is our fifth year being open. And what we do there is we coordinate services for child abuse investigations and allegations of child abuse. So I think what's really important for people to know is that we're not a government agency. We're not a state agency, even though there's Warren County in the name, right?
Yeah.
So we are a local nonprofit. And what that means to people coming in and to the community is that really in the whole process, we have the best job, which is to look out 100% for the kids. And so that's what we often tell our families. We're there to provide options and then support them with those options. So some of the services that we provide that a family might experience is we have what's called a forensic interview, which is a really fancy name for a conversation with a child. And I have that conversation with the child, and that conversation is really for investigative purposes. And so what's so important about that is that children who've experienced abuse or neglect, in the past, they were talking to 10 to 15 people, telling their stories over and over again, getting re-traumatized. And in this setting, they get to tell their story one time. And so we bring the grown-ups to their world instead of the other way around. We also have advocacy services. We have a family advocate who works with me at the CAC. She connects families to mental health therapies, to community resources, really anything they need. We can also connect children to medical exams should they need it for abuse purposes or for normal purposes. We do prevention, we do education. So there's really a kind of a full complement of services that we try to offer in Warren County.
And so when you talk about the forensic interview and how different that setting is as opposed to what it used to be, like you said, where a child may have to go to maybe they're talking to a teacher or a guidance counselor, and then they've got to talk to maybe somebody else along that chain, and up on down the line. How beneficial is that, both from the investigatory process, but then also for the child to only have to tell that story?
Right. I think it's huge for both, to be honest. And so as you said, in the past, sometimes we would have a situation where well-meaning people had not great systems to work in, right? And so, a kid might disclose, they would tell the teacher. The teacher would take them to the guidance office. The guidance office would call the principal. They might bring the nurse in. They might call the parents. They might go to the cops. So by the time they were done with this whole system, they've talked to 10, 15 people, and that's not unique to Warren. So this is a problem all across the country, right? And what we know about children and adolescents, I mean, just think about it fundamentally. I know you have kids. I have a kid, right? You ask them a question one time, you get one answer. If you ask them the same question multiple times, what happens?
You get different. You might get the same answer, but you get different versions of how they get there.
Right.
Yeah.
Or eventually, you just, in the case with my son, you get whatever he thinks you want to say, just so you go away, right? Like he's a teenager, right? So, and so that's really hard when you have an investigation that needs to be done, and you have different people who need different pieces of things. And we not only do we take child abuse very seriously, but we also take very seriously the justice system, and this is somebody's life on the line as well. So with this model, which is the best practice model across the United States, the child having one interview means that we reduce that possibility of kind of those different details and those stories. And it's also a very structured, evidence-based conversation, which again is fancy terms for saying, I went to a bunch of training and so, in that room, we're doing more than just asking questions. We're assessing, the child's developmental ability, their vocabulary. We've been trained to not ask questions in a suggestive manner. We've been trained to access memories with children. We've been trained to do all of those things in kind of a trauma-informed, which is a buzzword these days.
Right,
trauma, and really what that means to our children and our families is that when they walk through our doors, we hope that if we've done our jobs right, we've set up a place where they can start that healing process right away. So we have, physical safety measures in place for kids and families. We have mental health measures to help them feel safe. And really that healing process begins when we sit down with that child and we have that interview, because now they're taking a weight and they're giving it to somebody else, and it's no longer theirs to carry.
Yeah, and that, when my family was living in Colorado, I worked at a child development center on the base we were living at there, and so and this was 10 years ago now, but that was one of the things. Obviously, we had a lot of training, and when a child says something or you suspect abuse, et cetera, and there were times when, and most of the kids that I was working with at that time were preschool to like fifth. And so there were times, and especially the younger kids, would come in and they say things, and you just, okay, does that mean, mom or dad was doing something to you that you shouldn't, or that they shouldn't be doing, and that it's abuse, or was it something that you just didn't like? And so you're, like you said, you're asking a bunch of questions, and a lot of times it feels like people can get into the habit. For example, I had a child one time come in and say, "Oh, well, my dad hit me this," and then you've got to find a way to well, what do you mean hit you this morning? Like, was it on purpose? Was it an accident? But without saying, did dad abuse you? Right, like you said, that leading question, and it really seems like this, the practice that you guys have there with this forensic interview takes away a lot of the ambiguity on behalf of all those people and agencies that might have to be part of it.
Yeah, I think it does take away some of the ambiguity. I also think that, having those agencies in there, they observe the interview through a closed circuit system. And so having them have that ability also helps us ask the right questions in the right manner. So, law enforcement might say, could you ask them this? And I'll
Right.
say, well, no, not like that,
Yeah.
but I could ask them this way.
Right.
So different people need different information. And especially in Pennsylvania, we have two sets of laws that govern child abuse allegations for the criminal code, and we have a law for children and youth. And of course, they're all different.
Right.
Like the time,
Yeah.
So it's hard. Like we have good people in Warren County doing this work, and it's a really hard system to work in.
Yeah.
But I think to your point, we've also as a country, as a culture, created a stigma around reporting child abuse. Right? I hear this all the time. I don't want to make it harder for them. I don't want them to be in a worse situation. I don't want them to just take the kid away.
Yeah.
And so I think another thing that's so important is when you have those questions and you report it, you're not automatically triggering a child being ripped from a home.
Yeah. Right.
I love to watch crime dramas just as much as the next person. But it doesn't all happen in an hour.
Right. Yeah.
And it's not
Yeah.
all traumatizing and terrorizing. When you put in that report as a reporter, really what you're saying is, I would like a professional to take a look at the situation. I'm beyond my capacity, and I would like somebody else to take a look at it. And I think that's so important for people to just feel like it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay to put it in and not have anything come from it.
Right.
That's the best case scenario.
Better safe than sorry.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Absolutely.
And so, you mentioned several times, you're gathering all the agencies in one spot. And what have you seen, over these 5 years as far as the cooperation level and kind of getting all of those agencies on the same page? Whereas, yes, they might all need different things, but maybe they now have a better understanding of how each of those pieces works together.
Yeah. And again, in Warren County, I think we're so blessed because of the small community that we do have. A lot of the people doing this work already have those really great communications and relationships. And, so when I came in, I was kind of like, oh, okay. But what we have been able to do is to formalize the process, a little bit more. It also bring some more of the providers to the table that really are focused on the health and well-being of the family. And so when I say the table, like once a month, we sit down as what we call a multidisciplinary team. And that's the district attorney's office, law enforcement, children and youth, the CAC. We also have representatives in education there. We have a mental health agency, Family Services of Warren County. We have medical representatives from Warren General. And so we sit down and not only say what happened, where are we going, but we also say, like, what did we as a team do really well? And what can we improve and what can we make better? And I think that's so important to have that open conversation. And then we also say, how do we support the family going forward? How do we support the kids? Victim witness sits at that table as well. Representatives of a safe place sit at that table as well. So it's really not a matter of us duplicating services.
Right.
I always use a safe place for this example. They do what they do really, really well.
Right.
And so it's not a matter of us trying to do what they do. It's a matter of us collecting information from the family so that they're only filling out one intake form, right?
Yeah.
Right? And letting other agencies do what they do really well, which we do have in Warren County.
And I think it's important probably to point out that, yes, you are the Children's Advocacy Center, but you're not limited to just the child individually. This is a whole family approach to getting through whatever the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, when we bring children in, it starts from the very beginning. We welcome children in their non-offending caregivers,
Right.
because we recognize that families come in all different shapes and sizes, and sometimes that person who can support you is not that person that you're related to by blood or even that you live with. And we welcome those caregivers to bring support people. And then it really is a whole kind of collective effort of how can we surround this child and this family and support them. And we always tell our families they're stuck with us for as long as they want, you know?
Yeah.
So that's the other thing that we know about trauma and these experiences is often we're meeting people on the worst day of their lives, right? As a parent, often they've just found out that week that this thing possibly happened. They're coming in, they've talked to a couple of the agencies by then because we have to assess the immediate safety of the child.
Right.
But they're coming in, and often parents have no idea that any of these allegations took place.
Right.
Children protect parents really well. They do it intrinsically. They don't even know they're doing it. And so we meet people on the worst day of their lives, and we recognize that we then throw a whole bunch of information at them,
Right.
which we put in a folder, but still,
Yeah.
right? And so we tell families, like, if you wake up 3 weeks from now and you have a question, call us.
Yeah.
If, 6 months from now, you're like, oh my gosh, I wish we would have taken them up on the offer for therapy, call us. Like, something else that's really great is that children's advocacy centers across the nation work really well together, like a really cohesive unit. And so if we have a child maybe who's going to college that we've been providing services for here, I can pick up the phone, call the director in another state, and link them up with services. And it's that same kind of continuum of care, which I think is so important. And we also do that for, each other and for kids in each other's communities. So, for example, I might get a phone call from Texas that says, hey, this thing happened here, but the child is living in Warren.
Right.
We don't want to put the child on a plane and send him to Texas, right? So we'll interview the child here, and we'll send all of that information down there. And because of the training and because of the national standards that we all adhere to, they can use it in any court. They can use it in any process. And then we provide services still here to the family because that's our child and our community.
So it's really almost like a seamless transition, regardless of where someone might be in their life's journey.
We try.
Yeah, well,
right.
Yeah.
We don't always get it right.
Ideally, right? Yeah.
Yeah. We don't always get it right. But when we don't get it right, like that's what that multidisciplinary team is really great for, to say, how can we fix this next time? Yeah, absolutely.
And you mentioned, obviously a lot of people coming in to see you, or you're seeing them on the worst day of their life, and you're just throwing kind of tons of information at them. And I assume it would be just generally overwhelming for a lot of people. And you had mentioned early on that one of the services is working with mental health providers and getting that. How important is that aspect to this entire process of having those mental health providers available for not just the child but the family members?
Yeah, I mean it's crucial. It's critical. And I'll take it one step further and say not only for the child and the family members, but also for the professionals who do this work. There's a lot of secondary trauma that comes from law enforcement, first responders, anybody who's hearing these things day in and day out. And so that's why we have mental health right at the table, because they're kind of a dual role, right? So they're providing that support and services for the team, and they're also giving us support and services for the family. And not every family might go to family services, but having that presence there, they'll be like, well, I know you guys tried this therapy. Have you thought about this therapy or that therapy? At the CAC, our family advocate went through a national kind of training program. And so she can do some mental health screeners right there at the center, which is also very helpful in that seamless transition, because when we make a referral, they get the mental health provider gets that information from that screener. Right. So again, that seamless transition. But just getting children and families engaged in that process, if it's appropriate for them, the sooner we can get them engaged, the better the outcomes. And it's not for everybody.
Right.
I'll be honest. Not everybody comes out of it feeling like they need trauma therapy or they need, support counseling. And that's okay too. That's why we say we're here to provide options and support. Really.
Yeah. And so, I know, especially with, from the onset really of COVID, mental health has been kind of tricky for a lot of people to get in. One, because so many people, pandemic is not something a lot of people have experienced previously. Yeah. And so it's almost a shared trauma. And a lot of people recognize that, hey, this is a major, life event, and it's really kind of changing everybody. And went and sought mental health. And now in the aftermath, it's been so difficult for a lot of people to get into providers because there simply aren't enough providers. And so, like you mentioned, being able to have that mental health screening right on site there, how valuable has that been for you?
It's been extremely valuable, as has been, I don't want to diminish at all the professionals that we work with, because I think, they do a really great job, and we experience all those long wait lists as well, right? But because of that communication and that community that we were talking about, if we have an emergent case that needs to be seen immediately, we can make things work. That's a struggle, again, all across the nation. Every conference that I go to, every meeting I sit in on across the nation, we talk about finding mental health professionals. And finding mental health professionals who are equipped to deal with child abuse is a whole nother layer of difficulty. And so, excuse me, one of the things that the movement's working on, and that we've been looking towards at the CAC is things like telemental health, so that kids can do it at home. Another thing we've been looking at is partnering maybe with other CACs in other counties. We might not have enough disposable income in Warren County to hire our own mental health, right?
Right.
I would love to have my own therapist right there on site, but maybe we can partner with another CAC or a couple and have like a revolving, so that kids have that immediate access. Some of the other things that have been talked about kind of on the national setting is really working with therapists when they're in their education and really talking to them about working with children who have this trauma. So it's coming. It's not a perfect system. I don't think there will ever be enough.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And part of the pandemic and what came out of it that I think is really great for mental health is that people started talking about it.
Yeah.
Right? And so we reduced the stigma about talking about your mental health and needing help. And we still don't know what the pandemic did to kids. Like we have ideas.
And probably won't for a while.
Yeah, we have ideas, but we still really don't have any good cohesive idea of what happened to kids during the pandemic.
Well, and it's, you mentioned, still just don't have enough providers and it's not like it's a profession that you can do a quick fix or go out and have a job fair, right? I mean, it takes a lot of training. You got to go through the whole educational process. So when something like that hits, where there's all of a sudden a mass influx of people needing care, it's not like you can just, all right, well, we need to go out and hire 6 more people, right? And put them on an overnight shift and we'll just run 24 hours a day. I mean, you've got to wait for those people to come available. And now that they're in demand, it becomes even harder. We're seeing that too educationally with teachers, and there's just not as many of them coming out. And when we're in a rural area, like this, sometimes, like you said, the resources are not maybe what they would be in, say a Pittsburgh or a Philadelphia. And we've got to find ways to draw them and want to be in our area.
Yeah. We experienced that with medical as well. And so, one of the components I mentioned was that we do offer locally medical exams for children when they come into the CAC. And those are very non-intrusive exams, right? But it gives kids a chance to talk to a provider and to really hear that their body's okay. Yeah. So from research, we know that the biggest question that survivors have, even well into their 60s, their 70s, who were abused when they were children, is one, can anybody tell by looking at me? Right. And two, is my body okay? And so that's something, kind of the last component that we've really worked hard to put in place here in Warren. And again, the problem is that to get a child abuse pediatrician, there's only a handful in the entire country. Yeah. Really, because it involves a whole nother specialty, a whole nother set of residency. Basically you'll be in school as long as Grey's Anatomy has been on TV, right? So.
That's a while. I didn't realize it. So it's funny you mentioned that, because my wife actually just has gone back and started, kind of picked up where she left off, which was, I think, in season 5 or something, whatever. But I happened to see how many seasons there were. And I just it didn't occur to me that it had been that long. I mean, we're talking close to 20, I think. And it just time gets away from you.
It does. Yeah. My son bought me a magnet for Christmas this year that says, trust me, I'm practically a surgeon. I watch Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah.
So, but that's what we're talking about, to get specialized as a child abuse pediatrician. But again, through the network of children's advocacy centers and children's hospitals, the Pennsylvania chapter of American Academy of Pediatrics has really been working hard to kind of shore up those gaps in rural areas, and doing some of that through telehealth. Right. But locally we do have options as close as Jamestown, Warren General. So it's really coming along way.
I think that's a good place. We can take a quick break. We'll be back with more Coffee and a Conversation right after this.
The only thing worse than being stuck at home is being stuck at home without coffee. We can't let that happen. Browse our selection and order online. From sweet to tangy, hot or iced, we have something for you. White King Coffee, because every cup makes a difference. Cheers.
Welcome back as White King Coffee presents Coffee and a Conversation. I'm your host, Brian Hagberg, for Your Daily Local, joined this week by Executive Director of the Warren County Children's Advocacy Center, Melissa McLean. Melissa, we were talking before the break about the medical health, and you mentioned how rare, the pediatric abuse physician, child abuse, that mouthful thing,
right? Yeah.
But within that same breath, you also mentioned telemedicine, and obviously we're recording this and we're going to put it out, as a live stream. And how beneficial has the advent of telemedicine been to your work at the CAC?
So we haven't yet seen that realization. There's different parts and pieces of that here in Warren County. But I think the main focus, certainly for children under a certain age, is to have that one-on-one personal connection. And telemedicine is great for certain situations, but when you're talking about children who have been abused or neglected, or, teenagers who have very sensitive questions to ask, there's no substitute for a person in the room. And so I know I've said it before, but really the people in this community step up in a big way for kids. And so we had a meeting, at one of our team meetings, we're like, we've got to do better for kids. Like, what do we do? And we pulled all those people to the table. And again, Warren General has been great. Dr. Clark, who is at Warren General and is also now going to be at Warren Pediatrics.
Right.
She's a huge supporter of the work, and basically we're in the nitty gritty right now of like, how do we do this? How do we afford it, quite frankly?
Right.
And how do we ensure its longevity past us?
Right.
So
Yeah.
we're talking about putting systems into place. For emergent cases, I know that, and I don't want to speak too much out of term, but I know that Warren General is working on bringing that telehealth,
Right.
so that there could be a provider in the room, but then there can be somebody backing that provider
Right.
up.
Yeah.
And so that helps to alleviate some of the extensive training. You still need training.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. But not perhaps as extensively. And we're not taking people out of the community, and we're not, hindering that part.
Well, I would think even as maybe like a long distance consult or something, just having access or a wider range of access
Absolutely.
to those resources will go a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I always say CAC land is great for this. It's the only profession I've ever worked in. When you send an email or you pick up the phone and you ask a question, the person on the other end not only says, I will help you, but they also say, here's what we did. Here's
Yeah.
all of the paperwork. Here's what else do you need. Here's 5 people that you can call. Here's their cell phones. And so, the big cities do have those child abuse pediatricians. We have one in Philadelphia. We have one in Pittsburgh. But with the standards, the national standards that we have, any findings have to be peer reviews. There's a lot of checks and balances, and they provide that. I called up a child abuse pediatrician, I think in Philadelphia. It was like 2 weeks ago. I called them, and she called me back, and it was just a simple, basic question. And she's like, "What do you need? We got this."
Yeah.
So I think that's what's really important about that whole system that we're talking about.
And like you said many times, it's not just you're not isolated really. There's a community of not just CACs but providers and law enforcement and everything, all just kind of working together to find ways to benefit the child.
Yeah.
And so, obviously we're here at White Cane Coffee, and you mentioned obviously needing some resources.
Right.
White Cane is trying to help you guys out with that. We've got this is the Special Reserve Premium Coffee available here at White Cane. Just stop on in, get yourself a box. I believe you can also order online at whitecanecoffee.com. And a portion of all this goes directly to you guys, correct?
Yeah, directly to the CAC. So this started, I met Bob and Vicky years ago, and I love coffee. As you can tell, I've been drinking my White King coffee out of my Myrtle Beach mug here this morning. But I approached Bob and Vicky, and I said, I would like to do a fundraiser. And Bob said, what do you want? And I was like, well, really, I want my own coffee. I want this.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay.
Yeah.
And so the Special Reserve blend was born. I think it's been about 3 years now that we've had it. And so a portion goes to the CAC. It's a good, here's my coffee commercial.
Right.
It's a good medium blend, low acid, high energy. So
That's the way I like it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
K-cups ground.
Yeah.
And actually this is what I drink. Like I wouldn't have a coffee blend I didn't like.
Right.
So that's been great. And when we were searching for our facility dog, Tiger, we haven't talked about Tiger yet, but he's our facility dog at the Advocacy Center.
Who's taking a nap right behind us as we
is,
speak.
yeah. He's our most popular employee.
Uh-huh.
When we were looking for Tiger, it was Bob and Vicky and the White Cane Foundation that said, hey, we know people.
Yeah.
And they were able to connect us with the agency that provided us with Tiger, and then a year later provided the sheriff's office with Olive.
Yeah.
So it's been a really great partnership. And it's also, really important. One thing that we know about child abuse, well, we know several things, but
Yes.
one of the things that we do know is that individuals with what's perceived to be disabilities are abused at a higher rate. And very often it's those individuals that people don't take time to explain things to.
Right.
And, so even from that aspect, it's just really good to have that partnership to help bring that dual awareness.
Right.
But it's also really tasty coffee.
Which always makes it better.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, if you're gonna do something that serves as a fundraiser, and like you said, I mean, if you're gonna do it right. And this is absolutely, again, this is the special reserve blend available here at White Cane, also online at whitecanecoffee.com. And this is now obviously I tell people every day Dragon's Roast is my favorite. That's just the way it is. But if I had to go to a second option, I'm going to the special reserve because, like you said, it's got everything as a coffee drinker that I like. Low acidity, high energy, and you can't ask for much.
And it's a good base. So my husband laughs at me because he says I drink the stuff I put in my coffee and not my coffee, right?
Right. Yep.
So it's a good base for that to put stuff in.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to be one of those, have a little coffee with sugar.
Right.
But now it's just straight black. It's it was funny. My family used to make fun of me because they all straight black all the time, and then there'd be me just
Pouring stuff
pouring
in
and dumping some more, a little bit
Right.
more here, and then eventually, I was one of those things. I don't even know how it got to that point, and then it was just like, oh, just black is good too. I like
Right.
that, right? And now
Yeah.
it saves me some time because now I don't have to sit here and pour as much.
every now and then you go back and you're like, oh yeah, this was good to begin
Yeah,
with. Why
right?
did I- yeah.
So like you said, we haven't really mentioned him yet. Taking a little snooze behind
Right.
us, but Tiger and what has Tiger really brought to you guys?
Yeah. So Tiger is arguably our most well-loved employee in the CAC. So Tiger is our facility dog. We call him our canine advocate sometimes when he wants to be professional. We started down the road for Tiger. Oh gosh, it was back in December of 19. And again, just an example of the Warren community really coming together. Oaktown Holidays took on as their mission to raise the money for us.
Right.
At the time, I was the only employee at the CAC, and I knew how important it was to have a dog of Tiger's caliber, but obviously I didn't have the time or the energy, right? So we were so grateful that they were able to do that for us. But Tiger provides basically support to children and to families. His job description, he's an official employee of the CAC. He gets paid in treats and pets. He's the only employee that had to take a pay cut this year because his treats were adding a little too much, right?
Yeah.
So Tiger
in both cost and weight, right?
Right, yeah. Yeah. So Tiger came from the Freedom Guide Dog Foundation. They're on the other side of Syracuse. And so Freedom Guide Dogs trains seeing eye dogs.
Right.
A small percentage of dogs who start that training program actually graduate from it. I think it's 15% or less. And don't quote me on that, right?
Yeah.
But it's a very small percentage. And so very often facility dogs are seeing eye dog dropouts, we call them.
Yeah.
In Tiger's case, he was a fully certified seeing eye dog, and then his person got sick. And so he was returned to the foundation. He was looking for a second career. We were looking for a dog.
Right.
Perfect fit. So Tiger is at the Children's Advocacy Center whenever children and families come in. We always give children the option to meet Tiger or to not meet Tiger.
Right.
It's entirely up to them.
Yeah.
And if they do choose to meet him, we then give them the option if they want Tiger to be present during the interview. Again, it's entirely up to them. They get to decide where Tiger sits during the
Right.
interview. I will tell you that 95% of kids have Tiger and that he sits on the
Yeah.
couch right next to them. And so it's all the studies that we know about dogs and people who are dog lovers certainly know this, or cat lovers. Or,
Yeah.
it reduces that stress level. It provides that feeling of safety and support for children.
Yeah.
It also gives them something else to look at. Like they don't
Right.
always want to look at me all the time, right? Like, so they
Yeah.
can talk to Tiger. And then, his primary job is to continue to support children throughout their process, whatever that looks like. He can go to court with children when they have to testify. He can sit with them up on the witness stand. We can be there before and after. Sometimes we have families who just call and say, like, we miss Tiger. Can we come get snuggles?
Yeah.
And, come
Right,
on
yeah,
in. Like,
yeah.
absolutely. He's also, from an agency standpoint, just been really great as a way to open conversations with the community. Child abuse is a hard topic.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't want to talk about it
Right.
because it's easier to pretend like it doesn't exist, right?
Right.
But as you can see, like Tiger, he's a bit of a celebrity here at White Cane. Like he just walks in and does his
Right.
thing. But everywhere we take him, he's an instant comfort to people and a really great way to open those conversations. He's also, when we take him out in the community, which we try to do as much as we can, just to let kids meet him. Like, he does trunk or treats with me. He does all sorts of things. And then if a child should have to come into the center, sometimes I have kids who are like, oh yeah, I met Tiger,
Right.
blah, blah, blah. Like,
Yeah.
and they have that sense of safety already. So that's been really nice for us.
Well, and as I'm sure the folks can see my tiny humans behind us, but like you said, when you first came in and before you had a chance to make sure that it was okay for them to interact with Tiger because some allergies or fears or whatever, but like you said, he's very disappointed because nobody's pet me yet, right?
Right,
It's been
yep.
about 30 seconds in the door. But it just, like you said, it seems like a very natural, icebreaker. I mean, obviously my kids are animal lovers
Mhm.
regardless, but if we're out and about and they see somebody walking a dog or whatever, oh, can I go pet? And it becomes that, hey, do you mind if my child, pets your dog? And for you, like, hey, Tiger's very friendly. Is it okay if they pet? How much can that just spark a larger conversation?
Almost all the time. Every time, people ask about his patches and they'll be like, oh, what do you guys do there?
Yeah.
Like, what is that for? Oh my gosh, that's such great work that you guys do. And so almost every time it sparks that conversation. It also, again, Tiger, we talk about that secondary trauma for people who do this
Right,
work,
yeah.
right? So it's great for our employee wellness program because he has to be walked every day,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, right.
So I have to leave my desk at
Yeah.
some point. But we also offer it to first responders. And I always joke, we're right by the hospital. We always have a clean bathroom. We always have fruit snacks and Tiger.
Yeah.
So if we don't have a family in there, if we're not busy, they can stop, no questions asked, get a little snuggle after a hard, emergency call or whatever, and visit with Tiger. But he's so friendly and
Right.
open, and he has become a bit of a celebrity.
Yeah.
He's one of this year's United Fund co-chairs. He's the first ever non-human co-chair. So,
And runs those meetings with authority. I'm sure.
right? Yes, absolutely. He definitely has a personality. He's kind of like a teenager with me. If he decides that it's time to go, and I tell him no, we're going to wait. He sits
Right.
and he's like,
Yeah.
rolls his eyes like any teenager would. But he's really been a huge benefit. And to see kids when they're going through the courthouse, which is, it's an intimidating building,
Right.
even
Oh yeah.
for grown-ups, right?
Yeah.
And we do, again, have all those people at the table. Ladies at Victim Witness do a great job surrounding the kids and really supporting the families. But it's something to see a child take Tiger's little leash, and it's like that sense of pride and, that kind of self-esteem boost that they have in a very adult world. They're like, this is Tiger. I know Tiger. He's going to listen to me. And just to have that continuum of comfort and care.
Mm-hmm. And so you're getting set to here next month in September at some point, set up like you said, a special kind of meet and greet with Tiger here at White Cane.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're still finalizing those dates, and when we have all of the dates in place, we'll certainly get that out, through you guys, through social media. We're on Facebook. Tiger's on Facebook. Tiger posts
runs his own Facebook page too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He posts more than I do probably, but we're just going to have a Treats with Tiger event here at White Cane. It's going to be very informal. We'll probably do it a couple of times a month over the course of the winter months. So, one, give people somewhere to just get out of the house for a little bit.
Right.
Two, Tiger will be here, and he will be up for snuggles and whatever people want.
Yeah.
And then I'll be here, and maybe some of our other providers will stop in from time to time, but really an informal way for people to ask questions, for people to get resources. It's when you're a parent and you have questions about things, then that's the whole nother layer of like,
right.
Well, if I call this person and ask it, do they have to do this? Do they have to, am I going to get reported?
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so it's just come in, see what the CAC is about, ask questions, come snuggle Tiger,
drink some special reserve, right? See,
special reserve will be on
shameless
tap that day.
Right? Yeah.
Shameless self-promotion. So just, a really informal way. We hope people will take advantage of it, just to, get those questions asked and answered. And even if it's as simple as, when should I teach my child the proper names for their body parts?
Yeah.
Or when should we have those discussions about what happens?
Right.
We get those questions a lot of times on the phone.
Yeah.
But just having some of those questions answered. And so that's the plan.
Yeah.
I hope people will join us, even if they just want to come drink coffee and eat a cinnamon roll. We're down for that too, right?
Yeah. Always. So, and you mentioned people, give you a call if they want to stop in and see you. If they want to give you a call, how's the best way to reach out to you in those instances?
Yeah, so certainly they can call. Our phone number is 814-313-1004. And if we're there and we're available, we'll answer the phone. People are welcome to stop by. I would say just give us a call first, because sometimes with a small office, we're either out or we have people in. We're happy
or you're walking Tiger.
Walking Tiger. But we're happy to have people stop in and visit the CAC. And then our website is www.warncac.org. And so our website has a wealth of information. It's got some pictures of the inside of the building. It's got visitor guides. It's got what to tell your children, how to report child abuse, training resources, all of those things, information on how to contact us to do, training and presentations, which are all free.
Yeah.
Of course, we never turn down donations. Right. So another shameless plug, right? But we don't want cost to prohibit somebody from asking for help, or it often I'll have people say, well, I only have 3 people who want to do a training or whatever.
Yeah.
I will train one person because it just takes one person to create that spark,
right,
and ripple out to protect children.
All right, Melissa, well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but thank you so much for sitting down with us and bringing Tiger in.
Right.
And, let my kids pet him for a little bit. I know they enjoyed that, and certainly you guys over at the CAC offering a vital service for the community, and we thank you very much for that. And look forward to hearing more about having some treats with Tiger here at White
definitely.
Cane. All right, well, that will wrap it up for Coffee and a Conversation presented by White Cane Coffee for this week. Don't forget to tune in each and every Saturday morning at 9:30 a.m. for Coffee and a Conversation. For Melissa McLean, this is Brian Hagberg saying thank you so much for watching, and enjoy your weekend, everybody.
You know what would make that better? cup of white cane coffee.
Wow, that really is great coffee.
White cane coffee, because every cup makes a difference.
It's not just about music lessons. It's about hard work, perseverance, dedication, self-expression, making memories. Let's make memories together.